Jag kan väl börja med att säga hej på svenska så att ni hör att jag kommer från Skåne eller Lund, precis som föregående talare. But the rest of this will be in English because Cleantech Invest is listed in both First North Stockholm and First North Helsinki. I want to be able to utilize this presentation a lot. So, well, I'm here to tell you about this company. My name is Alexander Lidgren. Most people call me Bigge. I'm also here to tell you about this low carbon society that you may have heard of, and that is not only a necessity, but it's actually something that is happening right now. And we have 15 companies that are right smack in the middle of this development. We are an investor and accelerator, and we have invested in 15 companies that we are very active owners of. Here they are, Nordic companies, apart from one that is located in Berlin. We believe a lot in the Nordic strengths in this area. Typically hold 15% of them on average. Little bit different perhaps from some investment firms in that respect. We typically go in with a small ownership, and then we try to increase as we have watched from the inside how the company is performing over time. We work with preset options and similar things to actually be able to do that. So we have done that in several of the fast growers in this portfolio. Thought I'd show you straight away how it's been going for them for the last years. I joined the company 2.5 years ago approximately, and as you can see, the revenues have been growing quite extraordinary actually for our portfolio. We typically invest very early. We tend to be the first investors actually that get on board, but now the companies have grown to some even entering the expansion stage. We will have 2 companies crossing the 10 million euro mark this year, and more to follow, I think. This is us, 4 partners in the firm. Good mixture of competence, I think. A lot of us have been running our own companies. That's my background. I've been raising VC money myself and growing companies. We've been able to do some exits of our own, even have some big company experience in there. Lasse used to work at Neste Oil with merger and acquisitions. And we even have a PhD in venture financing among us. So good mixture, I think. I'm really happy with the team. It's a hard-working, driven, and actually quite creative team. The board we recruited this year, an external board, but actually I think all of them are now board chairs and so they wouldn't be that external anymore. Quite spread out, and this is important for us. Our companies tend to go for big international markets, and we need to have footholds in these markets. I'll tell you a bit more about that. Peter Carlson, for example, formerly Tesla supply chain management responsible. If you tried the S model, he was the one probably helping out setting up the production for that. Thomas Bengtsson sits here in Stockholm, private investor. Matti Vuoria has been on the board of most multinationals, almost I would say, in Finland, a very well-known industry man in Finland. James Penny runs alternative funds in London. This is what we invest in, and it's almost embarrassing when you tell companies this, because you can imagine the challenge of actually having a business that is high impact, low capital, and born global. And of course it is a challenge, but that is still what we are looking for. We are not a big fund in that sense, so we need companies that are fairly low capital in their growth journey. These investment areas, energy and resource efficiency and decentralized renewable energy, well, the next slide explains even better why we have chosen those. So as you can see here, renewable, and more clearly so even, decentralized installations of new electricity production is the part of the energy market that is really growing the fastest. And this will continue. Last year was the first time when the new installations of renewable beat the fossil ones. Energy efficiency, if you look at that graph over to the right from your side, this has actually, it's a big American study that mapped the cost of these new sources of energy, or these sources of energy. They put coal and nuclear in there as well, of course, and then they mapped the average cost of an energy efficiency project as well. So this is basically comparing megawatts to regular watts that you could produce. And energy efficiency tends to, of course, be the cheapest form of energy. It's cheaper to decrease them than to actually produce new ones. We have a lot of companies in this, and payback times can be quite astonishing in energy efficiency projects. I mentioned internationalization, and we are firm believers in boldly going to international markets early. Companies in our portfolio, since they are from the Nordics, where the market is not big enough for high growth typically, they need to go where the market is the biggest for their product and where the key selling points are the strongest. So I mapped some of them here. They're a good example. Energize, for example, they save energy in compressed air systems. That's used in the manufacturing industry. Large part of the manufacturing industry has moved to Asia. So we basically have all the sales focusing on Asia or China for Energize. Swap.com, it's America's fastest growing online consignment store. So a second-hand online shop. And what better place to have that than in the largest homogeneous market of the world, US. But it's a Finnish company to start with. But they typically go international very quick. I'll jump straight into our portfolio because this is what I like to talk about the most. You may or may not have heard it, but 1.1 billion people, I think it is now, actually lack access to reliable electricity still. And this is where Nocart is active. They do these power management units where you can plug in different sources of renewable energy. They then turn it into grid quality electricity. So they utilize typically the renewable resources that are available on site. It tends to be solar, but typically maybe you'll have a waste resource that you want to do biogas to electricity from or similar. And all these need to, of course, communicate and then turn into the kind of quality electricity that the grid can handle. And that's what Nocart does. A company that has grown really well. Also another example of internationalization. A lot of this growth is actually happening in Africa, this whole rural electrification. And that's where a lot of their projects are. Quadrupled revenues 2015. Profitable company from the start, actually, Nocart. We invested when it was almost an idea on a napkin, and it has been profitable from year one. 600,000 euro profit last year and looks to be approximately the same this year. Already announced 13 million of orders in 2016, so another year of growth. And they have a huge pipeline of orders for the coming years. A challenge here, as you can imagine, is that the customers tend to be fairly different. It can be an association of in a village, and it can be a mining corporation, it can be a hospital, a tea plant in Nepal, and of course securing project financing to make sure that you actually get the money in this project is actually one of the bottlenecks to grow fast. The team and Vesa have been able to do this really well so far. But of course this is crucial for a company like this on these types of markets. Well, I mentioned this online consignment store, swap.com. And the average American throws away, I think it's between 5 to 8 kilograms of clothes each year. We buy more and more clothing, and we actually wear it shorter and shorter periods. You've probably heard of this whole fast fashion industry. A lot of this, or a vast majority of it, actually goes to landfill. It just gets thrown in a pit, more or less. Swap.com is out to change this. So this is a 3 football field large fulfillment center outside of Chicago in the US. Customers simply put all your second-hand items. You can empty your garage. Every second American can't fit their car into their garage anymore anyway. You empty all your items in a box, send it into swap.com. They categorize it, sort it, take nice photos of it, price it, and puts it up on swap.com, where it's now 1.5 million items for sale. That makes it the largest second-hand shop online in the world. Business model is pretty straightforward. They share the sales proceeds with the customer. So when it's sold, Swap gets 30% and the customer gets 70%. And then they take, I think it's $1.5 per transaction as well. That's an important $1.5. Also a company that's been growing really well. Also quadruple revenue. This has been a while ago, so they're actually quite a bit. But they're above $1 million in revenue per month. And this growth has continued, so they're growing quite nicely. We have almost 8% ownership in swap.com. One of our very recent investment is Rescue. I used to run a restaurant. That was my first real day job, you could say. I started a restaurant and I ran that for 2 years. And I would take a lot of waste meals to the waste bin because you typically overcook. You don't want to run out of the customer's favorite dish. There's something like 15% of over capacity in restaurants, so they throw a lot of meals away. In bakeries, it's even more. Rescue lets customers buy the leftover meals or the leftover sandwiches from bakeries. Platform or simply an app. I use it every time I'm in Helsinki because it's big there already. I even get recommendations because the app knows I like Thai chicken. They'll say 200 meters away from you is a Thai chicken. You can buy it at half the price. That's how it works. Rescue gets a cut of each meal that is sold. They're currently at 500 to 700 meals per weekday that they're selling. Grown big in Finland, and we've now launched it in Amsterdam and Tallinn and looking to launch 2 more cities this year. This was started just this year. So the first revenue month was basically January. They've already sold something like 75,000 meals through this app. Well, it says 55,000 users here. I think the more interesting term is I think they have 10,000 active users. So 10,000 active users that open or check the offers per week, which is a really big number. I mentioned Energize also, a company that we have focused towards China. This is a compressed air system. If you've worked in manufacturing industry, you will know compressed air. Very common bearer of energy in the manufacturing. I'd say some 90% of all plants that manufacture something use compressed air in some shape or form. This is a car. I think this is actually from the Tesla car manufacturing plant. Energize looks at compressed air, and it's a fairly bluntly managed asset still, I would say, and there's a lot of potential savings to be made. So they put sensors in place. They are able to monitor, measure, and manage compressed air systems so that they're more efficiently run. They typically save some 30% of the electricity costs in a compressed air system. There's a lot of inefficiencies typically built up over time in a compressed air system. Typically it's built because of the factory was being set up once for a certain amount of things to be produced, and that changes a lot over time. So compressors will be over-dimensioned and even under-dimensioned, and there's a lot of inefficiencies to be found, and a lot of leaks. A small leak of some 2 millimeter costs a lot for a company. I think they found some 180 leaks in one of their projects in Finland, so not even one of their bigger projects. This is a picture that I think is quite fascinating to look at, for me at least. So this is the kilowatt hours on one side of the graph per cubic meter. I think it's the bar, the pressure on one side, and then it's the cubic meter per minute, so the throughput on one. And this is the measurement points in their system before they are able to optimize the system, and then that is afterwards. And this is actually what 800,000 euro of savings looks like. So this is a huge factory in China. They have now the largest manufacturer of flat screens as a customer in China. So the flat screen you have on your wall is most likely being produced now using less CO2 thanks to Energize. Also a company that's been growing really well. This is also to show you why we think it's so important to go to the markets where the selling points are the largest. Energize now sells its solution completely as a revenue sharing model. So the customers don't pay anything up front. They simply get a cut of the savings as they happen. So Energize can take 80% of the savings year 1, customer gets 20. Year 2, Energize takes 60%, customer gets 40, and then it goes down into a service fee. They try to get 4-year contracts in place. This is really common in China. As you can see, this is revenues for these energy servicing companies per region, 2015. Huge business in China. And in China, it's even common that the customer actually gives away 90% of the savings year 1 when an energy servicing company comes in. So that business model works really well in China. Another example why it's important. This is a graph that shows the carbon emissions per kilowatt hour. So this is China, and then it's EU, and then it's actually a kilowatt hour in Sweden. So this, if we compare to putting Energize to use here in Sweden, saving electricity in manufacturing plants, the carbon effect would be a lot less. It's still more than, I think it's more than 60% still of the electricity in China is produced by coal plants. So it's largely coal. Although they've made huge progress in solar, it's still largely coal. And of course here in Sweden it's hydro, nuclear and wind. So we have a low carbon electricity system. Energize is also performing well. Pipeline of deals has grown tremendously this year, and they tripled revenue just in Q3 compared to 2016. It's been a journey, however, up to this point, because it's fairly long sales cycles to actually close these deals. They need to be really credible and show that they can achieve the savings, and that has been a challenge before they got the first big customers on board. Now they have 3-4 really strong reference customers, so I think it can grow even faster now. We have initiated, I would say, we haven't put it on any market or anything, but we have initiated the listing process. So they are now in the process of selecting investment bank, because we want to list it here on First North Sweden. We think it's a company that can be really well understood here. Real quickly about 2 more companies. That's about what you can probably be able to digest. I know it's a lot of exciting firms to take in. Nuka, it's a building management software. Sold as software as a service to big real estate owners. Measures energy, air quality and sustainability data. And what they do, they've really taken building management from the seller, you could say, up to the real estate manager's desk. A lot of real estate managers still don't have a simple dashboard where they can actually see how much in real time is being consumed in energy, what's the air quality in different offices around the building. So also a fairly bluntly managed asset, I would say, still in the world. It's been growing really well in Finland. I would say all of the customers that have more buildings have been wanting to utilize Nuka for more buildings once that they have started in one, which I think is a really good indicator for this company. So they are now expanding to Netherlands and Belgium. Just recently installed the first 22 buildings in the Netherlands. Sophie Filtration cleans water, removes fine particles from water. Less than, I think it's like 1/100th of a hair, the thickness of a hair, 100th of that. That's how small particles they remove from water. And what happens otherwise is typically filters get clogged up. So the filtration's filter is cleaned using ultrasound and a backflush that takes away the residue. Now used in, for example, energy companies use it. The district heating plant in Helsinki, they're able to recirculate the water, and then they remove, in a continuous flow, they're able to clean particles from it, sulfur filtration, so that the water can just keep circulating. They're now saving some, I think it's an Olympic-sized swimming pool every second week in that. And then it's also water to be recirculated in wet scrubbers, for example, in energy companies. Lot of water to be saved. 8 projects already first half of 2016, which is more than the company has installed in its whole history. So they're also growing nicely. Last slide just tells these growth examples that I've already told you, shows how fast some of these companies are now growing. This is our goal, to be Europe's leading Cleantech accelerator by 2017. And I think we are making some headway in getting there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Biggie. Or Bigge.
Yeah. Biggie is fine.
Biggie is fine?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, like, how do you identify potential investments, and do you have like a predefined exit strategy for each investment, or how's that work?
Well, we identify companies in 2 ways. Partly they come to us. We get actually a huge inflow of companies as well. So a lot of companies contact us now because we've been around for a while, and I would say, you should ask our companies of course, but I would say we have a fairly good reputation. We've been quite active, and that is needed when the companies are typically in challenging situations, which has happened already for some of these that are even now growing quite nicely. So we get quite a few companies coming to us. But of course we're also out and about a lot. We need to show our faces and also just to learn what's going on. So we are also ourselves reaching out a lot. As to your second question, if we have a fixed exit strategy for each company, I would say we have an idea of how the exit would typically happen at a certain point. But to say that it's fixed and decided would probably be going too far. Because typically there can be something happening even on the way to that exit, even if you have a potential listing, which, for example, swap. Optimally, I think we would like to list it in US when it has reached break even. But of course, up to that point, something could happen. It could be a bid from someone. So I wouldn't say that we set anything in stone when we invest.
Yeah. And as an external investor in Cleantech, how would you actually value each holding? It's really difficult because it's all not listed. So how are you working with that problem? I mean, you must be really communicative with the investor.
Yeah, well, that has been one of my challenges, you could say, since I started as a CEO 2 years ago, and it has been to communicate how these companies are actually performing, because that is, of course, how you can evaluate us.
Yeah.
At what level are these different 15 companies? So we do a lot to communicate their progress. Every full and half year, of course, we report exactly on how their revenue is going, but even quarterly, we do summaries on how they're performing, and in between even, we tell if significant events are happening. So we're trying to be really communicative on how they're going. We also have company analysis is made by us. So there's an actor that I think is actually really good in Finland, Finbank, that has done this now, I think 3 times, and this is the 4th time now coming out. They go through all our companies in detail and try to list the present value for all of them based on the potential. They do a lot of discounting, and then they discount the whole portfolio a bit as well, and then they come up with a potential company value for us. And that, of course, anyone can look at over on our webpage or on the internet. It's a new one coming out quite soon. So we try to do a lot to make it easier for investors to estimate our value.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the cash flows. I mean, cash inflows is related to exit.
Yes,
I'm guessing.
exactly.
And so right now, the burn rate is out of cash, a pool of cash.
Mm.
So how much cash do you have now, and when can we? When would you have to sell in order to cover the business, so to speak?
Well, we don't actually state our exact cash registry, except for when we have reports. But I think we could typically manage with the cash registry we have now until exit time.
Yeah.
Or in reality, we could exit some of these companies now. You can imagine a company like Nocart already profitable and growing. But we don't want to exit that just because we have to. We have the advantage of actually being able to exit when it's most suitable. So that's when we want to do it, of course. We also have some advisory income into the companies. We actually have some income each year as well.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Yep.
You have 44% of NSIs. Who are the other owners, and when will the listing occur?
The listing will occur during 2017. I would say it's more dependent on a few. I would like to have, well, as it is now, with their existing base of contracts, they already have a nice growth, actually, nice revenue growth. But I would like to have 1 or 2 more contracts before we actually list it. When that happens is more the timing, but it will happen during 2017, hopefully even the first half. But let's see when that those orders fall in place. Other owners are basically employees, CEO, founder, some business angels. That's the ownership group.
So you are the biggest?
We are the biggest owner, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the audience? The thing that I was thinking about then was risk. I mean, a typical investment firm, let's say they have quarter of the portfolio is cash flow driven, and the growth is another quarter, and so on. How are you manage the risk in your portfolio? I mean, these are all more or less growth companies. They are growth companies.
They are growth companies, absolutely. Well, I would say that question would be answered probably different if we looked at this 3-4 years ago, because at that point a lot of them were really early stage. Now some of them have already at least managed to get across the worst hurdles, I would say, in a growth journey. So now we have a bit risk diversification, even in terms of growth, which we probably didn't a few years ago. But that's the name of the game if you invest early, which we do. I would say it depends a bit what you compare us to. If you compare us to a regular venture capital firm, we probably have a little bit different compositions. We are not betting on 1 out of 20 or 1 out of 10 making it. But I actually think we have a good risk diversification in the companies we have now. Some of them are still early stage, but quite a few are over the major market risk, I would say. There will still be some risk in terms of future funding rounds falling into place, etc. That's also how it is before you are profitable. But I would say that risk has decreased quite a bit in our firms. And then, of course, the sectors matter a lot, I would say. We have, well, as you've seen, we have companies in China, US, utilizing the growth of electrification in Africa. That diversifies the risk a little bit as well, I would say. It's not targeting one big growth market, but it's actually fairly spread out.
I get it. And here's a question that you might like, because the thing is that I registered for Rescue yesterday.
Okay.
But the thing is, there is no restaurants near me.
Sweden, no.
No. When are they coming?
Well, if you know a really good person who could be running it here in Stockholm, we're actually looking for one right now.
Okay.
So that's for all of you. Send them the rescue's way. Well, the company has been really busy growing in Finland, Amsterdam, and Tallinn, and actually looking at 2 more cities this year. So we have not managed to properly grow Stockholm yet, or Sweden. So, well, if you know someone, send them our way, and we might be able to hurry that up.
And what about the swap, the swap business? Is that a business model that will work globally, or is it just in the US, or how's that?
No, it can absolutely work globally. I wouldn't say that it can simply be transferred to every market in the world. There are some that have challenges, but for example, in Europe, absolutely it could work. US was the best place to start. They are located outside of Chicago for a reason. It's a transport hub. FedEx and all these have their big hubs there, and you can actually reach all of US from that location. It works really well as a start in the US, and there is a lot of clothing waste in the US to feed in. A challenge in the beginning was actually getting the inventory up, getting people to start sending all of these things in. Now that has started to kick off. So, but absolutely, it could potentially be moved to other places as well. It's just been enough with and there's still plenty of room to grow in the US.
I see. I was thinking you're listed both in Finland and in Sweden, but you were listed first in Finland, right? And then you listed in Sweden. How come you are listed at both?
Well, partly we're not even a Nordic story. I would say if you look at the firms, we're even in a global story with some of these firms. And I thought it would be really appreciated by Swedish investors. So that's one reason. But also, of course, Swedish First North is more active than Finnish First North. There's more companies here. There's more investors looking at the market. So I wanted to get exposure to that as well.
All right. So the Swedish stock is more liquid than the Finnish, or if you want to invest, which stock should you buy in order to reduce the liquidity risk?
Well, we've actually been able to get quite some attention now in Finland as well. So I would say it's probably fairly similar. I haven't looked at it in detail, but well, we've been able to get quite a following now in Finland as well. So, but the potential investor base here is of course bigger.
All right. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I could take a question.
Sure.
This is a line from a Tom Cruise movie, along with your first question. The sweet ain't so sweet without the bitter. You showed us 15, let's call them startups in various stages. And do you call the startup CEOs, are they entrepreneurs, you would say, or CEOs?
Yeah, well, I would say that they are entrepreneurs, but in reality, we have even switched the entrepreneur into a CEO, which is a challenge, but we've managed to do that in firms. So, well, they are both entrepreneurs and CEOs.
So those 15, do they have a plan, and they know if they miss some serious milestones, do they know they will be divested by you, or don't they?
I would say that is very it is really present for them, even on a day-to-day basis. For a lot of these companies, it's almost like they're having their finger on the pulse. Customer income is of course always most appreciated, but they are acutely aware of their cash flow, all of these companies, and they absolutely know that. Well, it is in that way. It's an elitistic game. We need to see progress, just as everyone needs to see progress. You need to see growth. You need to see that happening. Otherwise, not only us, but otherwise hardly anyone invests in companies. That's just how it works.
Have you divested anyone recent years?
Well, we have written off one company, for example, completely I think it was last year, a company that we simply had to write off. We wrote off the complete value. So it's not even stated anymore as one of our holdings. So yes, we have.
Any further questions from the audience? Well, I think we pretty much will have to round off there, unless you have other questions.
No, thank you, Bigge.
Thank
you,
you.
Cleantech Invest.
Tack.